Thanks, Toby. And thank you guys for being here. The issues that we're talking about today are so critical. To get a gathering like this anywhere around the world is a beautiful thing. It's great. It's rare to get large numbers of guys together. So I'm grateful and glad that you're here. And what I'm going to do for the next 2 sessions, so we're going to blast through for about 45 minutes. So can I say, like, Tony or someone, can you just wave at me if I'm like 5 minutes out? We're going to do intensely practical stuff on how to reach guys with the message of Jesus. And we're going to look at the whys, the wherefores, why it's so critical, get into some practical stuff. But then also, as we teach at the end of this session into the next session, we're going to look at men and church and why we're seeing this 30-70 divide. It is a thing now that Christian marriage is not possible for every woman, every Christian woman. And that is a thing. Like, one of the reasons I'm so passionate about this is I've got daughters and they've got to find, it's selfish. We've got to find some godly men for my daughters. But actually, it's not a possibility for every woman. That's outrageous. So if I'd have got to come to the conclusion, if there is more women coming to Christ than men, and if the church is populated 70-30 women to men, well, the conclusion is, does God love women more than men? Well, it's a question you have to face up. Does God love women more? Or have we got something wrong? Have we culturally and evangelistically in our discipleship, have we got something wrong? Yeah. Or is it all just a myth? Is Christianity a lie? Because you'd expect, if God is a God of love, he loves all people equally. So which of the conclusions are we going to come to? The conclusion I came to is that something somewhere has gone wrong. I mean, it's got to be true, isn't it? So getting together like this and talking about the practical stuff is so important. And over the last 25 years or so, and certainly I've been a good couple of decades involved, really full on in this, we've learned a few lessons and we've made so many mistakes, you wouldn't believe it. So I'm going to try and share some of that with you. We have got a Q&A later as part of a panel, but what I might try and do is leave space either in this session and the next session, or both, to take a little bit of Q&A as well. And can I just say that I'm really not a precious guy. I don't mind if you violently disagree with me. I don't mind if I agitate you. I don't mind if you want to have a row. If you come up with a better idea than me, I'm just going to nick it and use it in South Africa. So it's fine, and claim it as my own, because there's no copyright in the kingdom, right? So we're going to do this session on winning men to Christ, and so good to hear from Doug and the stuff he's doing on, and some of the stuff I'm going to say is going to cross over into his stuff, but we'll take it as we find it. Now, you will know that there is something out there at the moment of agitation about the whole gender issue. So if you are a guy like me who goes around the world and the UK in particular talking about winning men to Christ and having particular strategies for men, you are sticking your head above a parapet and you are liable to get shot at. So if you want some entertainment, you can follow me on Twitter or Facebook, and you'll see some of this sport that we get involved in sometimes when we do get laid into. I personally have come to quite enjoy it. Always try and respond in grace, but it does give you a little chuckle. But that means that we have to be very, very thought through. We can't just come out with rhetoric. We have to be thought through scientifically and theologically about why we do what we do. And so at CVM, we've spent tens of thousands of pounds on research. Documentaries, engaging some of the best scientific minds that the country has in order to present to you concrete evidence that men are different to women. Can I just say that I believe that God made the heavens and the earth. And I believe that he made you, and I believe that he made me, and I believe that he holds our lives in his hands, but he also made men different to women. I believe that with all my heart. I don't believe this nonsense that we are the same. We are not the same. But I can't just say that. I've got to show you the evidence. So, at great expense to a UK ministry, I'm going to show you a little video which documents to you the extreme difference between men and women. In England, there is a place called Gloucestershire. Anyone heard of it? In Gloucestershire, there is a competition every year where people chase a circle of cheese down a hill. We're English. We are slightly eccentric and bonkers. But let me show you one video which will compare to you how women and then men chase cheese down a hill, because this is the most scientific explanation I've got. So, run VT, please, Rod. Thank you, my friend. This is the women. No, it's good. I mean, that is a very steep hill. That's a steep hill. You can't pick it up there, but that is a steep hill. And it's a roll of Gloucestershire cheese that they're chasing. Now, there'll be a little pause just coming up. Little pause, and then it will run into watching the men. And notice the difference.
Bruised my kidneys last year.
Why did you do it?
It's tradition.
Do you like the cheese? No.
Gentlemen, I'll give you the best scientific evidence ever that men are different to women. This is called testosterone. Men produce 6 times more testosterone than women. Most women. Not all women. But they do produce... Just a joke. Don't worry. We're just having a laugh. That was serious. That was funny. We produce 6 times more testosterone than women. And that has an effect. And this is why we grow bigger muscles. Well, some of us do. It's why our voices drop. It's why men commit more crime. It's why you see more violent action, more boys in gangs. Why more men typically would sign up for the military. All of that kind of stuff is testosterone at play. Let me just say this on a serious note. If your attempts at reaching men they're the same essentially as your attempts to reach women, and your discipleship methods are the same, you will fail. You won't reach the ordinary guys. Now, I'm saying the ordinary guys. I am going to pitch this talk and the next 2 sessions at a typical bloke. Now, I use the word bloke on purpose. I'm thinking of my mates. In the time that I've got, you need to understand that I can't cover the broad spectrum of masculinity. Right? I can't do that. I can't cover the broad spectrum of like the high academic, the upper classes, down to the working class guys or millennials. I can't do it. So I'm going for a 30 to 40 something year old guy is the sort of bloke I'm talking about reaching, who's typically a working guy. You know, he could be blue collar worker, he could be an accountant. It's kind of like, you know, it's that spectrum of lower middle class profession to, you know, working guy, maybe unemployed. That's the kind of fellow I'm going to. You with me? You know, and now there's a reason for that, because actually when people criticise the stuff that we do, which does happen from time to time, you try and do anything new or fresh or reach people with the gospel, by the way, you will get criticism. That's just a fact, because you're stepping into a fight. It's far easier in men's ministry just to stick on the discipleship stuff. That's easy. But if you want to go for the battleground of winning men to Christ and snatching people from the jaws of hell, then you are going into a punch-up. So you're going to get that level of flack. But let me just say that the church is there for the more refined men, because the way the church currently operates is okay for the more refined upper class. I mean, your class system is probably less valid in Australia, but certainly in England it's very much a thing. But the church does quite well with the middle class guys, but it's singly failed the working class guys. So I'm going for those blokes. In the UK, they are the missing millions from the UK church. Men think, on the whole, and this is not just rhetoric, that the church is for wimps, it's for women, and it's completely irrelevant. And we know that because we've done surveys. We had a BBC journalist go onto the streets of Glasgow some years ago, and the journalist said, "What's the first thing that comes to mind when I say the word church or priest or vicar?" And the answer was, it's irrelevant to my life, or that's for wimps, or it's for people who need a crutch. Men like to portray, whether it's true or not, men like to portray that they're all sufficient, all capable, and in no need of any help. True? Yeah, it's true. We all do that. And we hate the idea of being needy. So any presentation of the gospel that's needs-based is implying that you need a lot of help, rather than calling men into a rescue plan and then dealing with them from there. Because we all do need help, and we all do need rescuing, we all need patching up, and we're all broken. But if you're starting there, you're not going to break through the veneer. So firstly, we've got this issue to deal with. The other thing we have to deal with is we need to understand that excluding weddings and funerals, 60% of men have never been to church. So it's just a profound mystery. I don't know what that stat's like here, but church is a mysterious place. It just is. It's like a betting shop is to a Christian who was raised in a Christian home. You know, like you just wouldn't go in there. You wouldn't have a clue what to do. And it's the same for most guys. And the other interesting thing is that certainly this is true in the UK, and I suspect it's the same here. If a bloke goes to a wedding, or he buries his mate, or he goes to a bar mitzvah or something like that, it's like, yeah, done the church thing, tick the box. So when they do the surveys, what religion are you? Most blokes would say something like, in England, they'd say, I'm C of E or I'm Catholic. But they haven't got a clue what they mean. But they actually identify as someone of a Christian basis still, although 200,000 men, I think, in the UK said they were Jedi Knights in the last survey, so that was a bit mysterious. I think the same thing's happening here. That's obviously a British humour thing. The other interesting thing we found out was we did a survey and we said, where are you most or least comfortable? And we had options like being under a tax investigation, having, a tooth extracted by the dentist. And we found that 50% of men feel more comfortable in a ladies' underwear shop than in a church. That is actually true. Men would rather be seen in a ladies' underwear shop than going to church. Only 33% of men felt comfortable in a church in our survey. We also found out that 62% of regular attenders in church are middle class and only 38% are working class. And that is amazing because the gospel is meant to be good news to the poor. So what is going on there? Why is that? And I think, to be honest with you, we need to do an analysis on our teaching styles, the kind of things we're presenting to people, how we engage with the guys, our worship styles. I don't think there should be any sacred cows. You look at the Gospels, or you look at Paul's letters, you look at Acts, you look at the way that Paul engaged with people, and there was debate and argument, feisty, wasn't it? We've adapted majority in our more reformed circles. Our mode of outreach is the monologue sermon. Now, I do believe in preaching and proclamation, but I also believe in a bit of argy-bargy. I believe in debate and argument and toughing it out. But the thing is that most Christian men lose all of their non-Christian mates within 0.2 seconds of conversion. Well, that's an exaggeration. Maybe a couple of weeks. But how many of you have got non-Christian mates that you regularly hang out with and apart from your work colleagues? I mean, not many of us actually. We feel absolutely confident we're on the front foot that we're doing life with. Really sharing life and seeing it come through to faith. So for those of us at CVM, that's actually a practice of our lives. We're down the gym or in running clubs or, we're making mates or down the pub with our friends because we make it a lifestyle habit to be engaging with a culture that's not Christian. Because if you don't do that, you can't understand it, can you? So I've actually worked with evangelists before that have put resources together that are trying to answer questions that people aren't actually asking because they haven't got any non-Christian mates. These are full-time evangelists who don't hang out with non-Christians. And you can tell when that's happened to a full-time evangelist because all their stories are about conferences they've been to, not about people's lives that they're engaging with. Just as a little tip. So we've got to get there. I'm sorry if this is sounding hard, but we're on a rescue mission here. And we've got to get out there. We've got to reach the guys. I'm going to show you how we can do that. Hopefully show you how to do that. Men between 40 to 55 are stopping attending church when there's no longer dependent children at home. And that tells you something, doesn't it? It's like, I do my church bit while my kids are there because I believe in it for my kids, But as soon as the kids are left home, it's like, oh, I think I'll do one on the whole church thing. That's not for me anymore. So you do see a hemorrhage of guys around that sort of age, certainly in the UK. The other interesting stat for us is the most common cause of death for a man under the age of 50 is suicide in the UK, which is astonishing. So behind all this, I'm all sufficient, all capable, I don't need a crutch, is actually a high level of mental health issues and depression and anxiety. I mean, how shocking is that? The most common cause of death in the UK for a man under 50 is suicide. It'd be very interesting to try and look at these stats from an Australian perspective and see where you guys are at. But I'm detecting in the short time I'm here, I'm getting a lot of guys saying to me, our culture's, banter aside about whinging poms and all that kind of stuff. Our cultures are actually quite similar. And I think we're probably further down the slippery slope to a liberalised culture than you guys are, but you're tracking that way. And I think the level of anxiety we're seeing in men, you are going to see. I don't think you're far behind. So if we can get in front of this, that would be an amazing thing. But that to me is just a terrible statistics that men are killing themselves. There's an interesting stat behind that actually, that the attempts of suicide amongst men and women are almost equal. But what they're saying is that when women become suicidal, it's often a cry for help. When men become suicidal, they do it. Don't muck about. They're brutal, and they'll just do it. And often, very surprisingly. And certainly there's 3 guys that I've known personally who killed themselves, and it just came out of nowhere. I'm like, I didn't even see that coming. Because men don't reach out for help, do they? So it's so important we try and understand how to get alongside the guys and how to build effective relationships. So in the UK today, we've learned, and I'm saying in the UK because that's what we've learned, I think it's probably the same here, that it takes on average 5 years from the point that someone's first heard about Christ to actually receive Christ into their lives. 5 years. Now, I'm a card-carrying man of the Holy Spirit, actually. And I believe that the power of God can touch someone as soon as you tell them about Christ and they can surrender their lives to Jesus Christ. You believe that? You can tell them the gospel works, they can come through. In my practical experience, that is true. Some guys are taking a decade, some guys are taking a couple of years, but the average is from point of first hearing the gospel, it's 5 years from point to come to Christ. After hearing the gospel about 30 times. 30 times. I mean, that is amazing. Why? Because men are stubborn. And you are all experts on everything. You all, even now, some of you are sitting here thinking, well, I think it's 27 times, actually. I'm sure the last time I checked it was 3.5 years. 80% boyfriend. No, it's 92. That's what you think, because you're experts, even though you're not. It's true. I remember sitting in a pub once, listening to a couple of plasterers speak when the Higgs boson particle had just been discovered. And these 2 plasterers knew nothing about particle physics or quantum mechanics. We're standing there and this plasterer goes, yeah, I don't think you can go faster than light because light curves, doesn't it? It all curves light, isn't it? And then this other guy goes, yeah, it's that Higgs boson thing because it does that thing, doesn't it? The thing. They're going, yeah, that's it. Yeah, we never go faster than light. I'll meet me mother-in-law again. It's all like that. They haven't got a clue what they're talking about. But they're blokes in the pub and they'd had a pint and suddenly they're experts. And if you're trying to present the gospel to men, you're challenging their worldview, aren't you? Massively challenging their worldview. So we need a slow process of Machiavellian deconstruction in order to get the gospel in front. No, I'm joking. We don't manipulate people to Christ. That's a joke. What we need is a process. Because this is the thing, right? Let me try and explain something. Right. My mate Steve. Here. Steve's sitting there. Stand up, please, Steve. This is Steve. Steve in the Royal Navy, 28 years, legend. Great mate, follower of Jesus. But imagine Steve, I mean, you wouldn't believe he's executive warrant officer in the warship, would you? He looks like an aging hippie. And he is. He only has his hair cut when he's going to see his mum. Normally, it's much longer than that. Anyway, enough of the insults. So Steve, imagine Steve before being a Christian. He would actually look the same. He was born looking like this. He's looked the same since he was 4. So, Imagine, like, Steve is not a Christian. He's a typical bloke. He's a typical Aussie bloke. He eats a meat pie with ketchup. He likes rules football, and Foster's and whatever else you drink. And he doesn't do church. He's just not into it. It's not his thing. He doesn't even go to church when there's a problem. He's just not bothered. When there's a problem, he talks to his mates or no one. He's got a dog. He has a cigar at Christmas. He's a typical bloke. Yeah, Steve Mark 1. And then imagine, thank you, Steve. You can take a sit down. I don't know why I made you stand up, but it was funny. And then, like, John is like Steve Mark 2. He's now like a full-on, fired up, born again, passionate follower of Jesus Christ. He gives to the offering. He helps in the creche. He's got the job that all men aspire to in the church. He works the sound desk and the visuals. He's gone up a notch. He graduated from the welcome team and now he controls the buttons. So he's that guy. He's tracking for eldership. He's on it. That's it. Once you've done the sound desk, that's the only way next, Rod. That's where you go next, my friend. Eldership. So he's there. Now, you don't go from here to here instantly. The church, for a start, don't let you do that. But you're not going to do that. The problem is that most of our outreach behaves as if Steve is here on the scale between the two. We start with a men's breakfast. I'm not knocking it because they're brilliant. We'll come on to how you use them in a bit. Or an alpha course. Or Christianity Explored. But to do Christianity Explored or an alpha course, assuming you use those courses over here, yeah? Yeah, but to do that, you've got to be prepared to answer a thing that says, give 12 weeks of your life, turn up, have a bit of casserole made by Ethel, in a church hall, and answer the deep, meaningful questions of life in front of people you don't know, and listen to a posh bloke from London give a talk on a video. That's a high level of commitment to do that. If that is the sole means of evangelism that you're using, or a men's breakfast, that is your first touch point, your only touch point, and if it just involves porridge at 8 o'clock in the morning, and compote, which is like prunes and figs, and a talk on the Rotherham Canal system in the 1880s, you're going to attract blokes who like prunes, figs, porridge, compote at 8 o'clock in the morning. That is not a normal man. That is a very rare subset of masculinity. Normally found in a local church, but not out there in the world. I'm just calling it. So you've got to go further back. You've got to do the things that Steve engages with whilst drawing him into your culture, not losing your values, not losing who you are, but drawing him along on a process to discovering the amazing truth that Christ is your saviour. But you have to go on that journey of process. So here's the thing. 5 years to come to Christ, 30 times to hear the gospel. 80% of men who come to Christ are bought by a friend, but most of them are women. Because the women are good at small talk. Men are not. I know that's don't. Now, some of you sitting there going, I do small talk very well. Well, that's because you're not a normal man. No, I'm joking. I'm having a laugh. Most men don't do small talk. I'm getting in so much trouble for saying this. But the man's portion of his brain that's given over to small talk communication is less than the size of one atom. My wife, on the other hand, she will phone my mother-in-law, moved 200 miles away from her, bless her, 8 years ago. She'll phone my mother-in-law back when we lived near her, and they'll talk for an hour on the phone about all kinds of things. And then they'll put the phone down. And I say, what are you doing this afternoon, sweetheart? So I'm going shopping with my mother. Shopping with your mum? You were just on the phone to said woman for an hour. What are you going to talk about? So we've got so much to talk about, we need to meet for a coffee. and go shopping in circles around shops. I'm like, how does that even happen? Because I phone my dad up and I go, hi, Dad. All right, son. How you doing, Dad? Yep, good. How's the prostate doing? Better, son. Okay, great, Dad. Yep, good to talk. Thank you, son. Phone goes down. I think that'll do for 6 months. He knows I love him. Gave him a call. Don't overdo it. Don't overdo it. He knows we love each other. We just don't need to say it. Well, we're just wired differently. I mean, cheese and wine receptions. I mean, John, in politics, I mean, how? I mean, I have to rehearse what to say. I can do this because I'm actually wired for it and I believe in it so passionately. But, you know, I come off the stage, I'm like a right grumpy what's it. Partly that's because I'm from the East End of London and it's just the way we look. But I'm actually quite shy as well. And a lot of men are, actually. Some men are bouncy, but a lot of men aren't. And so if we try and teach individual faith sharing to men, that's actually, like, it's a non-starter. Some men are amazing at sharing their faith. But for other men, we need to create an atmosphere of, like, a positive peer pressure atmosphere where it becomes easier, where the whole culture is geared around faith sharing. We're on the front foot of living out our life for Christ. Now, years of living on the front foot for Christ, I've got much better at faith sharing individually, but it takes time. But the average guy who's working on a factory floor or in a shop, it's tough. So we need to give them a boost of confidence to help you guys create an atmosphere where this sort of thing can work. Because we say that 95% of men are tongue-tied. Heard one evangelist say that men are like Arctic rivers, they're frozen at the mouth. And it's so true. It's so true. And just to be completely honest, the first three statistics are completely accurate and were sourced, but I made the last one up because it suits what I'm going to say next. But it's actually, no, it's a thing. So we do this thing called 4-level evangelism. Level 1 is make some mates, which is a big challenge. Level 2 is a challenge. How many non-Christian mates have you honestly got that you could invite to something? Level 2, mention Jesus in conversation. Level 3, tell them shed loads more. And level 4, see them become committed followers of Jesus Christ. Have you got it? Thanks for coming. You've been awesome. See you next year. Now we unpack it a little bit more. I'm going to show you a little video which portrays a very big problem. If we run the next video, please, mate.
Liv and Clara met at rock climbing. They get on like a house on fire. Jeff and Michael met through their wives. They get on like two men who met through their wives. The Guardian and the Observer.
So true.
Actually want to do.
So true, isn't it? Here's the thing. Most men's best friends are their wives' best friends' husbands. They're not often friends of their choosing. Some of you will have great mates, but very often, if it's the wives who are setting the social agenda and the social calendar, how many men here have a calendar in their home or some sort of online diary that is managed for social activities in the family? Quite a number of hands. How many of those hands could stay up if I say, do you run it as a man? Only Toby and one gentleman over there. And you're hosting the Melbourne men's gathering. Well, how astonishing. Most men don't run the social calendar. Most men don't. It's actually the women. So here's the thing. When we moved to a place called Bath in Somerset, which is a beautiful city, I don't live there anymore, it was beautiful. When we moved there, within 2 weeks, we were taking it in turns to drop the kids off at school on the way to work. Within 2 weeks, Karen said, oh, I've organised dinner with Sarah and Dave. I said, who's Sarah and who's Dave? So Sarah's amazing. Is she? Like, bear in mind, we just moved 200 miles to Bath. I'm like, who's Sarah? She said, oh yeah, we met at the school gates. I'm like, this is sorcery. How does this happen? See, and we've become really good friends. And we've gone for coffee together. Really? How? She said, no, yeah, and it's all great. It's really good. And she said, and we got together and we thought it'd be really good for the wives and husbands to get together. I'm like, Wow. Okay. So we have dinner, and Sarah and Dave come over, and I cook a nice bit of salmon with a hollandaise sauce, fresh vegetables, very nice. And Dave sits down, and he has a wispy beard, and he's into medieval poetry and tapestry. I would contend that whilst it's a good practice as a Christian man to spend time with people who are not like you, that's a step too far. So, my wife is driving the social calendar. In fact, what actually happened that night, and this is actually what happened towards the end of the evening, while I'd made some witty asides and got kicked under the table for, Sarah says to Karen, "Oh, what a wonderful evening. Let's go bowling in a couple of weeks." I'm like, oh, no. Like, I'm going to bowl him down the alleyway. Terrible. And then when we went to say goodbye, we had this terrible middle-class thing where you go to kiss the cheek of the person, I always think, I'm a London boy. I didn't grow up doing that. And, you sort of, do I go right or left? And is it actually, do you touch cheeks or actually kiss? And what's happening? So I'm on my way over to give Sarah a kiss goodbye on the cheek, and Dave reached over and I kissed his arm. So, level 1. First thing is level 1. Now, let me just say this. If we go on to form a CVM type thing out here, you don't say to the blokes, "You're going to come to my level 1 event." It's not. This is to help you understand the broad spectrum of what you're doing, okay, and how it all relates together. Level 1 is any activity that involves getting shoulder to shoulder with men. Men do not communicate like this. They do not go very close to another man. How uncomfortable are you feeling now, Andrew? No, you're not looking happy. He's leaning back. There's beads of sweat. Because men are like repelling magnets. If you get too close. There's those men who don't know about space, like I'm doing now, and they get right in your face. I just advise you do that. Just push him back. Just push him back. It's all right. And if they say, "What are you doing?" Because most of them are not aware of what's happening, so just push him back. They say, "What are you doing?" I went, "Just breathing. Just breathing." Unless you want to be the biggest gorilla in the room, most men don't want to be. Some do, very insecure, but you don't want to do this. Which is why, like, starting with a breakfast or just inviting someone to a context where you've got to sit opposite someone that you've never met before. It's just excruciating for men. So 90% of what we do is actually quite shallow. We say shoot stuff, blow stuff up, drive things, burn things, fish for things, sail things, jump off things. Generally use a ratio of 50% likelihood of injury, 50% activities not. Are things we actually have an annual injury award, quad biking, DIY, fixing stuff. Our mantra is do what you're good at and invite a friend. Just get shoulder to shoulder. Men do not communicate, as I said, like this. You get some guys who are trained professionally in this kind of thing, and that's what they do, but most men are not into that. Most men actually talk over their shoulders. We stand, you watch yourselves. I've been watching to make sure that Australians are the same in this as the British. And you are. In your break times, you are all forming loose semicircles. You chat like this, in arcs. It's because you can look away or you can manage your own space and so you don't feel trapped. Because for most guys, once you've spoken about the Aussie rules and you've mentioned, well, you don't talk about the weather here because you don't need to do because it's so wonderful all the time. Once you've done all of that, you're kind of stuffed, really. What you'll tend to find is that guys will open up when they're shoulder to shoulder. Now, jokes aside, this is why, don't leave. The best bit's yet to happen. No, leave. You're saved, it's fine. Be gone. So, The reason we did the cycling stuff was because it gets us shoulder to shoulder with guys. And I was actually cycling up a mountain with one guy who is not a Christian. And we cycled from Land's End to John O'Groats because I did a sports week, which I'll tell you about in a minute. And my mate, who's a supreme athlete, said to me, I was cycling along. I went, it's really hard, this is cycling, like, isn't it? And I only cycled up a short slope, pouring me sweat. He said, it's because you're fat and unfit. I thought, well, that's fair enough. Fair play. And then that night over a Diet Coke, he said to me, I bet you can't cycle from Land's End to John O'Groats in under 2 weeks. I went, of course I can, because, you're a better guy, that's it. So I sold my motorbike and I bought a bicycle and a dog. And I started running with the dog and cycling my bicycle. And we cycled from Land's End to John O'Groats in 9 days, which is like 1,000 miles-ish we did. But we took with us 7 guys who weren't Christians. And we experienced Christian hospitality all the way. And we raised money for a good cause, Christian cause. And we talked about it all the way. I kid you not, every single one of those guys, bar one, is now a full-on committed disciple of Christ. Because we built a long-term relationship and got shoulder to shoulder. I'm cycling up a mountain with one of those guys. And this guy says to me, Beech, I want to thank you so much for this week. I said, why is that, mate? He said, my brother committed suicide some years ago and I've never allowed my head to go there. But I've been able to think about it this week. I just want to say thanks. I said, brother, do you want me to, can I pray for you? And he went, I would like you to actually, but not right now. Because I find that a bit weird. But I'd love you to pray for me. And he cycled off. And a while later, he gave his life to Christ. Some months later. Why? Because it was not threatening. And we were shoulder to shoulder in the context of an activity. Now, we can't all cycle Land's End to John O'Groats, but you can all do something. So just to close out this session, there's other activities on here like coastal walks, bike rides, treasure hunts, dads and lads. Have you got the one of the slidey thing? I'll show you this. This one's awesome. We'll finish with this. The slidey thing, 20 metres of builder's plastic, damp-proof membrane, cover it in foam and water, throw yourself down it. Have a barbecue. Do you know what you've done when you do that? You create a memory. Men bond in moments. It's just stupid. But, I've got mates that I did the Duke of Edinburgh Award with when I was 15. And when I met them 8 years ago, I'm 46 now, so I was late 30s then, they still remembered stuff that happened on that thing. Because actually one thing that happened was we were in a storming Snowdonia in Wales and all our tents had blown down. It was my turn to go out there in my underpants and pin the tent back down and freezing cold. And the guys had put a little stove on for me and I made myself a cup of tea. We say brew, which I found out means beer. So we had a brew, but that wasn't beer, it was a cup of tea. So we had a cup of tea and I put my powdered milk in and some sugar and I started stirring it and it was going stiffer and stiffer and stiffer in my mug. And I'm thinking, what's happened here? I put smash in it, powdered potato instead of milk. And the guys going, ha, 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 Beech has put smash in his tea. And I'm eating it going, yeah, that's what I wanted. That's what I did. Because tea and food, that's what you do. Didn't even let my face back into a smile. Didn't show any disappointment, tea and food. That's what I wanted. Combining survival. We met in my late 30s and they went, do you remember when you put smash in your cup of tea? Yes, I remember. We talk about the same things over and over and over and over again. We're so boring, but we bond in moments. You do something like that, you create memories. The first time I did that, I accidentally crashed into a tree and bust my collarbone. And they still mention it. It was 10 years ago. Hey, do you remember when you broke your collarbone? Yes, I remember when I broke my collarbone. Do you remember because you aimed it at a tree by mistake? Yes, I remember I aimed it at a tree by mistake. Anyway, some people look at that and they say, well, that's a bit ageist. I can't do that, I'm an old man. Well, I would say the young men need you. They need father figures. They need mentors. They need people of cheery disposition who are going to be amongst them and pointing them to Christ. So get involved, be there. Barbecue the sausages up. Be a father figure. But also it's a mindset. We had a 90-year-old woman go down that the week you did that. We never met her before, we just put her down there. But she thought it was great.